A world full of stories, the future's changing. Reach out your hand and grasp your own fate. These are my complete records of the Göttershexe. May they prove helpful to whomever may find them in the future. I've written down all my life in the hope that it can change the outcome that was set in stone. I do not know what this will entail for the world, or if it will ever achieve anything. But please, at least, listen to this long story of someone who has lost this game. The strongest have arrived. After 1 week of unrivaled anticipation was it finally time. The week of the Johan Aopon had come. It was a sight to behold. During the 1 week we had gotten of preparation, how the students were acting amok as if this was a world-changing event. Those who truly wanted to could at any time of their choosing go out there to any of the places that magical creatures live. There were those who simply lived unhuman, and in some of those cases would people even encounter a magical creature without ever in their life figuring out that they did. Some cities instead had special regions that are mostly inhabited by magical creatures, so they are often just slums over proper living spaces, so it would be unwise to go there, out of nothing but a curiosity needing to be fulfilled. Then of course were there also those magical creatures that had their own cities. They lived in their own societies unshackled by human influence, but in reality would that just mean that inside those cities you have to follow the law of another country, where they are for certain not letting in any human wandering about? Is in the end the border to these cities open for most of any that want to go in? In the end was it never that easy. Most humans would not dare to even think to go out of their comfort zone, no matter how enticing. How many people talk about how great it must be to travel the world and see all these and all those, and for sure many also do. But even more will simply sit idly by and only let their dreams cross the border of their home country. This all amounts to only one conclusion. No matter how easy it may be on a factual level to come into contact with magical creatures, most never do. Even of those who come to the school, who many have come from all kinds of countries to attend this one of the 7 magic schools in the world to learn about magical creatures, without ever having beforehand had any contact with them. And this will be the failure point that all come to here have to overcome. If all that brought you here are idealized fantasies, will you quickly realize that reality is never kind, and you need more to persevere to the end. With that in mind, was this over-exaggerated reaction to be expected? This was their first time coming into contact with magical creatures, and in such a bigger event than it should have been. Nonetheless was the Johan Aopon still a big event, and us of the first year still had no idea how it would happen in detail. We had been given the overall plan, but with how it was made up, were all those of the first year easily to spot in the crowd, awaiting the arrival of the magical creatures. While we did not know when exactly they may come, were all 5 groups supposed to come this Sunday, to settle in before the start of the next week. And then do? Honestly, I could only assume that it would be classes as well, trying to, for a week, have the experience of human school. As such did the students gather on the main hall of the school campus to be as close as possible when the magical creatures would come out, and that crowd included members of all years. But the distincting factor the first years showed was this wave of confusion going through them when the first arrived. Frontlining and carving through the space, leaving behind a lightless void, was a pure black car with tinted windows, making it impossible to see inside. It was almost scary at how black this car was, despite the paint of the car, so you would presume at least being highly reflective. But what came to fill the void it left behind was a travel bus and just a regular one, so it was easily to see the chaos that happened inside. The confusion now was stemming from the sheer amount of people inside, something between 10 and 20 people, and while we were at no point told how many would come, did those of the first year, those who still never had seen a Johan Aopon before, simply assume that it would only be a handful of people who would come from each race, instead of an entire school class. Once they had reached the middle of the campus, with the bus halting closely behind the black car, did all the chaos inside the bus stop faster than a car crashing into a wall. While you could have seen it before, was it now easy to see what race had come first, with them all standing still, making the trademark feature of ears on the head stick out, casting a silhouette like a fence, each ear being one fence post straight up, and spiked unlike human ears which are round. Instead of now exiting, did they wait until the director, Professor Turnev, and another female student approached the car, having to push away the dense crowd of curious students that arced around the car bus convoy. But despite all that curiosity, was there also some amount of fear, so the crowd stood with a decent radius away from the vehicles. When having reached through the wall of flesh and clothing that was the school student most populated by the first years, did Professor Turnev and the girl go to the bus and waited there while the director went to the black car, and once she approached, did the black door open to reveal what was inside.
Who you think it's gonna be? It's gonna be someone important. But then, who are there? They are just chums. Oh, that's stupid. There can hardly be many more people inside that limousine.
First of all, that is not a limousine, and secondly, open your eyes allows you to see.
Please don't call anyone chums. We all have heard that being disrespectful to werewolves can end really badly. How did you know it's werewolves? It could be anyone. No one has arrived up until now.
Open your eyes and see. Who in the world else would have ears like that? You think they just wear carnival ears on a regular basis as a fashion trend?
But why are there so many? Are they really all part of this?
They're probably more than just the people who take part in. This is a big event, so we could assume that everyone will bring more than just the fighters to have an experience the exchange. And where would we put all of those then? 5 races with about 50 members. That makes 75 people, but you're surely more than happy to give away a room and sleep on the ground.
Ah, yes, another feeble attempt of the dim-witted Han Peng, ignoring all sense and reason just for a petty fight. Can you at least fight later? We don't want to look badly in front of them.
So you've given up on policing them, eh? While our group had their own discussion, did the door of the black car open, with a deep, old and grizzled voice coming out of it. But despite all of that, did it still have a dominating power underlying it. But the most important and outstandingly not outstanding feature it boasted was the language being used. For being this mysticized other race, did he speak normally in our language, without stuttering or accent, perfectly fluent and normal, instead of the expected abnormal, unrecognizable other language. It is good to see that the young ones are as energetic as ever, and you seem to still stand strong in your position, Miss Maxwell.
For humans, things hardly change that fast if you are not completely incompetent.
I did not just talk about your position as a leader of the school. Now, the body that voice belonging to finally and slowly exited the car. It was not that he needed to be slow, that he was old and unable to move fast, but rather that he was not in need of going fast. Nothing compelled him to rush, and for certain no one could do so. What exited the car was a rather small person compared to the tall director, with his ears that stood straight up from his head, just barely reaching above Miss Maxwell's head. but he for certain was not looking small, despite him physically being small. He was garbed in clothes that had on the arms long and wide sleeves, completely covering his arms and hands, and only had small glimpses of his claws poke out. On the other hand, the rest of his upper torso was tightly wrapped in bandages, woven in a complex pattern, all being pulled so tight that you could see the underlying chest in great detail. What was to see there, despite him clearly looking like an older person, the muscles so well trained that they would even make the strongest man act in caution when near him. His legs, and once again, just like the arms, were completely obscured by wide and to the ground reaching trousers. All of this garb then was either blue or white, with the pattern on the body being woven by both colors to make it clearly visible that it was there to begin with. The entire attire gave off something traditional, while underneath was someone who was far past his prime, but still in peak body shape, far beyond anything any of us could ever dream to achieve, as if he was saying that his weakest was better than the best we could achieve.
So what do you think? That thing probably took an entire day to put on. A real day job. You're stupid, Lapis. It is only early in the morning. How could he have already taken an entire day for that? Regardless of the validity of Lapis' words, can we assume that it is not something that you just pull over. That just shows how much importance this event holds, and is only fitting for someone you should treat with honor and respect. But it looks super stupid. The arms are super cumbersome, and it must be really cold with how tight it is around the body. Show some more respect to other cultures. You're still young and can learn, and unlike that moron over there are many cultural reasons why it looks like it does.
Oh, and of course you know them all.
Greatness at all cost, I guess. He feels so strong, but he looks so calm. There's so much safety around him.
Ignoring whatever opinions our class had to have to this appearance, did the old werewolf, named Hiram, realized by those who actually still paid attention, together with our director to the bus, to finally open the seal that locked away the true start of the Johan Aopon, and marked the arrival of the first race. The werewolves had arrived, and they had arrived en masse. Once the door was opened, did the floodgates open. Or at least so would it seem. As every year does it seem to not have your lunglings under control.
You cannot send them away when they are supposed to learn from this. That is the same reason why you bring more than we can plan for.
As it would seem you are sharper than ever. We should let them out. Their claws are becoming dull. First and foremost, did all line up orderly and quietly, more like their life depended on it, rather than that they were such proper people. The only ones who seemed to break that rule were the three frontlining that exited first, and with a gap to the fourth in line. What could be said about them in general was that they are smaller than human, as they live not far from here, where we not so far from the average human size of their origin, which simply concluded into the fact that werewolves are smaller than human. But what they lack in height, they had in muscle mass. Humans are built to be fast and enduring, while werewolves are built to be strong and silent, a difference you could feel if you had any battle sense. You all better memorize the faces of those who went out first. The strong are the ones who get out first.
And you are telling me you are an all-your genius capable of remembering faces of strangers you only see once from a distance? Oh, enlighten us, what else can you do, oh great Han Peng?
Well, there's more than faces to remember someone. You know, there's absolutely no need for me even to attempt to counter what you just said. They have far better arguments than I have in this matter.
Hold my eyes open, I can't afford to blink. You hold my eyes open, brother.
Please don't take this seriously. We need to deal with this for an entire week. In the end, was there not even need for Han Peng to mention it. or for Dorothea to try to get our attention, as the first that exited needed nothing more than his looks to get people's attention. Walking as the first in line, was it easy to see all of his entirety without a problem. Long, ebony black hair, smooth and perfect, not one hair out of line, garbing his perfect shaped face, of not one even in the slightest flaw or imperfection in it. Piercing blue eyes that dominate anyone who looks inside them, and on top of this perfection, pure white ears, with fur as smooth as his hair, the same color that his tail had, that was spreading out behind him, combed and tied together at the tip, making it one compact bundle that was aggressively steady to contrast his elegant and strong walking, where every step was being taken with as much purpose as someone had to find in their entire life. It was obvious. He saw himself as above anyone else here, the king of the world, and if it came down to those standing here, was that not so far-fetched. He was the epitome of beauty, a perfect and unobtainable standard that entranced all regardless of gender. There was only one singular problem with his appearance, one singular, insignificant spot on his pure white slate, and that was the one walking behind him, the one behind him being not only far less likely to win a beauty contest of any kind, but also being about 10 centimeters taller, and therefore casting a shadow on our beauty king, with how unfavorably the sun was shining right into their backs. The one behind him not only being taller in height, but in all dimensions, and unlike his former, does he have short tousled red hair, is wearing a scarf that hides half his face, and the part that was visible was just as unrefined, as would fit to his hairstyle, that also extended to his red tail, which was as chaotic as his head. But number one did not need to wait too long for this unsightly shadow covering him to disappear, as the second the larger werewolf spotted the girl that had come with Professor Turnev, and the director did he, in a rather bizarre to looking at, considering his looks, happy dance join with her, someone who maybe was still taller than number one by a bit, if you ignored the ears, but still smaller than number two. Then number three. I cannot stand him. He disgusts me, as I could tell at a glance that he was just like me. He was silently walking in the back, not paying too much attention to himself. Brown hair, ears and tail, all orderly and well combed, for the werewolf standard around him average size. Neither the moving fortress that number two was, or the perfection that number one was. Simply someone who you will forget was there if you don't pay attention to him specifically. And then he spoke up. Je hukle jagele huk farum rupi di drokehet. Forhafol, lo hukna na vloset, ramuten estesh film, sumehi gohafnu, amositesh.
What are they saying? He sounds mean.
Well, none of us could know, but I get the feeling it was better that we don't know what they said.
They are coming here. Why are they coming here? Did we do something wrong?
When you mean by wrong that we sit out here in the open, then probably. While Velena was trying to find a hiding spot, did indeed our group garner the attention of number 1 and 3, where most of the students of our class held a respectful distance from the werewolf. Was that simply too cumbersome for us, who were sitting at one of the benches standing around the campus, and also one that was significantly closer to the car than the main circle was. It was not as if at any point anyone told us to make space, and that is most likely due to the majority being far enough away to create some space for the werewolf. If all would have been this close, it surely would have been a problem, but as it did we stand out with this decision, with the strange looks we got from just sitting here, as if the place belonged to us, seeming to not bother anyone. But what this also did was to draw the attention of the werewolf. While the big one was being occupied with the one student that had come forth, and the rest of the werewolf now slowly exiting, all grouping up around the booth with Mr. Hiram, attending to those did the last two members come straight at us. And it was clear that they didn't simply by coincidence would walk in our direction, and then pass, with his piercing blue eyes at number one, scan our group. The first his eyes stopped on being Tim, but he quickly went over to the next. When he saw Forhan.Ponsan, did he for a short moment have a gleam in his eyes, but only for a brief moment. Finally, when he spotted me, could I feel a moment of confusion, but ultimately did he decide to bring his focus back to Ponsan. It doesn't take a genius to see them arguing over something, and just look at the first one. He clearly wants everyone to look at him. What a disgusting personality.
Oh, how perfect, then you two should get along greatly. You two can start a band called Please Look at Me, I Need Attention.
Oh, but what would you do when you can no longer point all your aggression at me? Then others could accidentally see who you really are.
Oh, don't worry, there's enough of you even for 1,000,000 people.
Corridor, ne firhufmu, ruhelirhef, oranhid, folkjotesh, unuten, kamral ircheme, juyagisi mi chime, fime. You think it's funny to come over here and speak a language we clearly will not be able to understand? Forhakesh, larhef, fifachifnu.
Ponsan, stop fighting with him. You should know best how bad it can end. I will
Here's
have
the
to
one
step
who
in and
started
continue
it.
trying to make
That's
fun of them,
all
all running around, pointing out everyone's eyes to get a fair share of eye for an eye.
You humans should know your place, or you will face someone not so generous as myself, bringing your demise. He's pissing me off even more when I can understand him. Now he's saying these things because he wants us to hear them. While Ponsan clearly was not giving off a pleasant atmosphere, was he, against the receiver's knowledge, abiding by the rule. He avoided looking into the werewolf's eyes, and may his words be foul, did he not directly address the werewolf instead, or said bad things about him. Going even further than that, is one's presence not determined by words alone. Your confidence, intellect, wit are all being displayed through the way you present yourself in your actions, movements, and responses. As Ponsan knows his limit, did he simply express his unhappiness in a way that did not cross the border, and as he comes from a family of tamers, did he have this ability where Dorothea could only judge through her learned rules. It was a lucky case that Zonfei and Ponsan did not have switched positions, as Zonfei may be as confident as Ponsan, but lacked that ability to fine-tune herself properly to erase this overexposed to act in accordance with your position. With this happening, did we finally also obtain the attention of the last member, with number 2 going to us together with the girl that he had greeted as first action of coming here. It didn't take long for those two to figure out what was going on, seeing how number 1 was standing there, with number 3 giving us this clear intent of readiness to de-escalate things if push comes to shove. Did that indeed not take a mastermind to do?
Ach, Verhosha, you really need to pick a fight with some firsties?
Kordilekvim!
Kitsanko, Hinrat Luriksan Lurkna, Nafremuder Ugarhit? You know, I could appreciate if you call me young girl, if that wouldn't be you implying that I am a child. We are the same age after all. So, who are you supposed to be again? I get the werewolves, but either you have some really tiny ears, or you are like a fourth wheel. Now that I think about it, a fourth wheel is better than just 3. I'm just the extra for Alemu here. Kid vi foltat mun aftam almin unudet, mit demme fisch mi jalnek sume. Fi has huk kutorn hist, jermo hukle huk fisch do huk rimoten.
You could feel the frustration for number 2 that he couldn't get anything of what we were saying. On the other hand, was there no need for us to know what he said, to clearly know that he said something in the direction of, please tell me what you are talking about. But with us doing such a commotion, did we ultimately get the attention of our director and the old werewolf, who had given his class some sort of introduction, or probably rather repeated it, on how to act. With all of the werewolf and how was he now coming to us, and he for certain did not seem happy about all the socializing we did. Thirsty through the head! With one hit on the head that he seemed to accept happening rather than him being unable to avoid it, did number 1 just turn away from us and lead the pack that was brought by Professor Turnev to the house that was at the edge of the forest. We live inside. This, for certain, would be cause of our problems down the line, but it was not as if we could change that fact. Our director was not so happy that us, be it that we are first year or simply as a general fact, had a nice chat with these werewolves. Especially Dorothea got a bad side-eye from her, which made her visibly feel bad for not stopping this, even if there really never was any choice, as we did not initiate the encounter. On the other hand, it did not seem as Mr. Harem seems to have any problem with our behavior, but he did seem disappointed in the werewolf for doing such a thing, as he clearly was able to snuff out what was happening without needing to get the situation explained.
You were told not to talk to the wizards. I'm sorry if I did anything inappropriate. This is an event they are not used to.
Oh, the fault for certain would lie within my children. Once they get too strong, they start to get a bit ahead of themselves. Especially some start to actively seek out fights to prove themselves what their standing in society is.
No, it's important that they learn to act correctly. Both sides are at fault here.
I should introduce myself. I am Hiram Garnhead, and the director of this bunch. As you can see, have we brought some more than just us 3 candidates. If any of the other 11 come funny at you, just remember that they are on par with you. If you give them some contra, will they quickly stop.
Please don't put any weird ideas into my students. We cannot have them running around picking fights.
It would for certain not harm if they once get shown the limits of their ability, and I would not say this to all of the students here. I can see why Forhan was interested in them. Now then, I have to get going. I cannot leave all my work in someone else's hand. Just keep in mind, if you speak up, will the small ones quickly retreat. They need to learn to respect humans properly. Director Hiram said this completely ignoring our director, and with that left her quite dumbfounded once he left to catch up with Professor Turnev and the 11 werewolves that are ahead towards the forest edge. Once he left it, our director got her composure back, and now had to try to undo the damage Director Hiram left behind.
Do not do what he said. If any problems arise, go to a teacher. There are enough around and they know how to handle these situations correctly.
But the director did not waste much more time on us and turned towards the crowd. While some had their focus on what happened with us, did most have their own discussions going on. To stop adding problematic ideas to thread, did she speak up to inform these that were here. But as to be expected, would a crowd this large drown the voice of one person trying to oversound it? A bit of magic did the trick to get everyone's attention.
As you can guess, were those the werewolves. Unlike the other magic societies, do they lay a big value on teaching their people about how to interact with those outside of their race. You will find that those 14 are going to walk around the school perimeter like any normal student, but that does not mean you have the permission to simply walk up to them. While it is true that they are supposed to learn interaction, do they not intend to do that during this week? They are simply here to see how we are handling normal school life. Always keep in mind that werewolves are dangerous, with how much stronger they are than humans. If you do not know their etiquette, please refrain from talking to them. How you are supposed to act within their society is radically different from what you are used to do, and that is also true for how they act when you misbehave. But they should know not to go too far, is there still a danger, and we will punish those who cause any conflict. But there's no point in any of this if we're just supposed to be as far away as possible. We can't even do that anyway. We have to pass that idiot if we want to go to our rooms.
I will only say this once. Do not cause any problems.
Yes, okay, Big Brother.
Don't even say it, Dory. I'm not out to have a fight with someone like that. Sometimes also called foreshadowing. Please do not speak it in existence, Lapis. I personally would not consider myself a creationist.
Does this mean we have to go past them every time? I don't like him. He's so aggressive.
Oh, don't worry. They would first need to get past me.
You're only making things worse. Lapis, you need to do something. You are pulling my tail here. You think I could do something here?
All you need to do is just stand there. That's intimidating enough for those shorties.
I don't know if it would be good to be a Goliath per se.
In the end, would it not matter what we thought about the werewolf? They simply would need to deal with it for now. Also was the next group already on their way. Once the bus and car of the werewolf got driven out of the school ground, did the next one take their place. This time only one bus, and only 4 members. Well, bus would be an imperfect way of describing it, as this was rather a truck pulling a modified container, to allow those inside look outside, but also us from outside see what's inside. 4 big burly blocks that were undoubtedly not human. They also seemed to get pretty excited once they entered the school ground. Well, more excited than they already were beforehand. This just gave the driver, who was just a normal human, an even more gloomy look than he already had. It was clearly not an easy task to drive something like this when there are 4 big, heavy and freely moving masses and cargo. When the truck finally stopped at the same spot that the werewolf stopped before, this time however was the director already ready to welcome them. It was indeed an extreme fortune, as the Yeti did not even wait for the already in reach standing director to get to them. Exiting the extra wide door to fit these in all dimensions larger than life beings are 3 furballs and 1 less furry leader. As I stood right now next to a custom-made vehicle, could you not clearly tell just how big they are? For certain was it clear that they are exceptionally tall, but with the director hushing over to them, and now the already not so small director standing next to them, having to look straight up to see into their face, really put into perspective how big they were. And that after their once right before being smaller than the average human.
They are so fluffy.
You know, by all accounts, should they probably look terrifying. You know, like a bear standing up. But for some reason, I just can't bring myself to be afraid of them.
They don't intend to harm, so why would you be afraid?
Well, I guess it hits the nail on the head, Henry. You are right, they just don't feel like someone that would hurt anything despite their looks. Yetis are friends of all, but they should have told you this in class.
You just need to cuddle them. I don't know if we should. No, Selena, don't you agree that werewolves are way cooler? They are far stronger. That is, they are...
Haven't you seen how afraid Selena is of them? She would never want to be with werewolves.
I don't think they are bad.
Leave poor Selena alone, you two. She has no idea how to call you off.
The Yeti are far more open. See, Senri gets it.
What a ridiculous discussion to make when they have come to fight. In a case like that, should you not factor in their fighting capabilities? It was obvious from looking at it that the Yetis would lose as it stands now. But this was only on the account that in a normal scenario, too much would need to happen before these Yetis would fight back. Whereas the werewolf would fight at full force in every fight they intend to have. In a forced fight, these ideologies would shift drastically. Fy Forhan amorren, jag går med ögon. Fy Forhan Johan, gå med han bebom. Fy Forhan Aopon, fy Forhan Fenfa, gå med han bebrun. Fy Forhan Nairen, fy Forhan Johan, Räffel, fy Forhan Johan gon. Rako, come here and oran Forhan Pon. What can be said is that the Yetis were simply too friendly, as the director simply couldn't get them to not wander out and trying to interact with those students around. who also did not seem too ready for a giant furball to come at them, making a noticeable swerve backwards. At least now everyone could clearly see them in full detail, more than they ever could have wished for with their gawking. Despite being effectively nothing but fur and no human features to recognize, was there surprising amount of differences between the three. One was the tallest, which really meant something with how big they were on the baseline already, being about 10 centimeters taller than the smallest. Clear white hands, not through the fur on it however. The fur was more translucent and little there to begin with. The skin underneath and also the only point that showed the skin was pure white. The rest of the body was made of 2 long thick arms similar in proportion to those of gorilla and rather round feet at the bottom, so it was hard for me to tell if that simply was an illusion created through them being completely covered in thick fur. Now the fur itself was a light brown, and underneath it you could see 2 tiny green eyes, and from the looks was it the entire eye that was green rather than just the iris. The smallest of them was more round than the others, and also the only one that showed more than just his eyes, as his small round ears stuck out of his head instead of lying flat on like human ears do. He as well had small eyes piercing out of his head, but this time in violet, which made them vanish a bit behind the equally brown fur. On top was the only one that had anything resembling clothing. I guess with that much fur would clothing be hardly of use. He was wearing a mask of a crescent moon, of which I could not determine the material it was made of. The last of the 3 was more thin and long. This should not take back from his overall thick body. He still had arms bigger than our heads. His torso simply could not fit 2 but only 1.5 humans inside. Of his once again brown fur pierced 2 red eyes, and unlike the other 2 did he have brown skin most best seen in the comparison to the smallest, as both had their ears sticking out, but the small one had these white ears sticking out like sore thumbs, with no fur on it and being oppressively clean. And this could be said about all, looking super clean, despite there probably not being a bathtub big enough to fit them. Did these bright white ears pierce the light brown? On the other hand, did the last one have brown ears that you could easily miss if not looking for them? But with how furry everything were these 2 smooth surfaces still sticking out. Then we get to the last one, and the only one who had not fur all over his body. His lower arms, legs, hips, shoulder and face all in a deep dark brown, almost black fur that was also far thinner. Then his upper arms and torso's brown skin. It had hints of fur on it, but mostly consisted of nothing but skin, showing off extreme strongly built out muscles. His eyes then also piercing through the fur on his head in bright yellow, but they also were far larger. The question here was if they seemed larger due to less fur or if they truly were larger. Would you look at that? That fellow over there has more chest on one half than you have combined in both of your meat lumps. You have now reached the deepest pit of that well you are crawling into, when that's the words you decide to give of you. Yeah, I really don't know what before me there. That was just bad. Seeing how Han Peng immediately and without fighting gave in, did Sun Fei just have a blank expression of disbelief in her face. Leave it to Tam and Tom to break anyone out of any state they are in, and throw them into pure and utter chaos. Han Peng is right, he looks super strong. Just how big his chests are. That guy is totally not like the others. Are they even the same race? Here, Tam, for the future. Do not just run around and tell everyone how big someone else's chests are in front of girls. With the boys, that's great conversation starter. With girls, they can be quite subconscious about the topic. Pah, as if that comparison matters. Those guys are like twice our size and built like a truck. They are born to survive in the wild through all and any scenario.
perfect survivalists that surpass our bodies in all aspects.
When you like them so much, why not just go over and live with them? Sunfei's statement may still need some more testing before we can confirm the validity of it. The most important part of the scenario was handily left out. Of the 4 Yeti was the one with half fur, the one who acted the most collected. It was to assume that he was the one in the position of director. What also now happened was that finally some help arrived in the nick of time, in form of Professor Newleg and Mr. Jyston, who helped get the Yetis to where the werewolf went. A match made in heaven. I can just feel it, that the werewolves will be rushing at the opportunity of having to live next to the Yeti. They are dying for this. Well, that double entendre wasn't so bad actually. With that, did no one else come for now, and we, including us that lived here, were forbidden to go too near the house the Yetis and werewolf had been brought under. They also did not come out of there for now, so all that was left was the students' rumors under the first years. What made this worse was the second years telling obvious lies, with how blandly they still had no real idea about this event from the one time they had been part of it. What also should be mentioned is that the girl from before blatantly ignored the no wizard rule. She came once back from there and straight past the teacher that are set there to stop us from going there. They didn't make efforts to stop her, however they did tell her that she couldn't go there as of now, at the very least. As the first 2 had arrived at the morning, now already a few hours had passed since their arrival, did most go back to their rooms, a luxury that it was denied to us, as we lived past the point we were not allowed to go to.
Will the werewolves take part in our normal classes?
It would be quite the transforming event if they did.
I don't think my mother will let them simply take part. It would be far too dangerous like that. They will probably take part in other ways. It would be fun if we had classes together. No, that's definitely not a good idea. You all are just going to make chaos.
The world's a lonely place. Only 10 people exist in this school.
For certain would there also problems arise with other people, but you are the biggest problem. I just know that you would not stop where you should.
All we can do is wait for what the teachers will tell us. There's no point in speculating about things that will be clear in a day.
It is sad if we are only allowed to see them from a distance. We can do that normally. No, there aren't any anywhere. The only way would be go to them, and that is way harder to do. But I want to see them now.
That is what all of this is for. But for that will you need to behave. No running, jumping around a stranger, no getting closer than you would to your closest friend, and no bombarding with words.
Yes!
Senri, you are hardly the one Tim talked to with that. You are of all people here the most reasonable. You should have no problems getting along with them.
I don't know. They are strange, but only the first. They are like you. I'm not that strong.
That's not what she's talking about, Selene. Human behavior. That's what we learn is most similar to that of werewolves. You all know that Henry is best with dealing with magies, so it makes sense that she would have to struggle with werewolves. As there was nothing but waiting to do for now, did we continue this talk for a while. Tem, Tom, and Henry wanting to spend time with magical creatures. Lapis, Tim, and Zonfei giving questionable advice. Selene being at an impasse, where she neither wants to not interact with the magical creatures, but then also can't see herself interacting with them. Peng actually giving real advice that got thrown straight out of the window by Zonfei, and Dorothea trying to convince us not to do this and that, which just hit deaf ears and people with selective Alzheimer. It was the middle of the day when the next group arrived, who came in a surprisingly boring regular car. Just a normal car, with normal people inside. Well, one was clearly not like the others, barely fitting inside his seat, and now that the car had stopped, was that person also the first to exit. A bear of a man, but still human. Bit wide and wearing a robe that hides what his precise body shape is, so it was not hard to imagine it. Beard like a mane and spiky red hair. Not only on his head but also the back of his hands and feet, which presumably were only inside sandals due to a shoe size issue. However, the most important aspect of this was how Henry started to shake when they exited. It could be fear, but that would be rather strange for her. It would be better to presume that it had another source. Are you okay? They feel so strange. It feels like something is pushing me. I guess it is obvious what they are with how half of the people here look like they are going through a panic attack. Tsukumogami! They are Tsukumogami! The teacher said they make you so shiver if they are stronger than you. And that in other words means? I don't know what you mean. Their eyes, you're not supposed to look inside them. And please everyone follow that. I know that everyone really wants to test it out, but this is really dangerous, even if they don't want to harm you. We are not that dumb. And that is clearly a trait you have over most here. Nobody panics, this is normal. There will always be those who struggle with the presence of a Tsukumogami. Please everyone respect what you learned in your classes. The Tsukumogami do not intend to harm anyone. What Sonfei was referring to and why the director came running so hastily was the fact that of those who still waited outside, the dam collapsed the moment the big Tsukumogami walked out. Presumably all of those did by accident look inside his eyes. First things first, and then the Olokon got completely overpowered. That was just the level of difference, that even on such a large distance would they immediately collapse from just a short amount of eye contact. It also explains the hyper-aware traumatic sensory shaking. It was not just their eyes that acted at access point, but instead that those are the most concentrated parts, with there being 4 Tsukumogami who are presumed on the highest end of Tsukumogami. Ha 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 ha! From Maxwell, how nice to see you this wonderful day! Mr. Müller, please give me just 1 second. Hohohoho, selbstverständlich, also dann, alle Mann raus aus dem Wagen! If there was one way you would expect someone looking like they speak, I have to say, this would be it. He is so loud! That doesn't mean you have to also be loud. But what if he can't hear us otherwise? Mr. Müller really had an impact on everyone around here. Most got the urge to immediately stand up and properly. Once he started speaking. This naturally did not apply to our class, but he did leave a big impression. Where the werewolves are scary and the Yeti too up and forthcoming, did Mr. Müller instill the look of terror in Selene, as if she expected any second the military to come in and draft every person inside, headed by Mr. Müller. Also did now the others exit, including the driver. In the end did nothing say that they had to have a chauffeur, and unlike the more than one car mount werewolf and the without a doubt unable to drive Yeti, are the Tsukumogami just like human, so nothing prevented them from driving themselves. You seem to be as spirited as always, but it is good to see you being still as strong as ever. Spirited! Fantastic! This is a fine expression for one as I am. But do not dwell on such pointless matters. Let us go towards the housing. These 3 will need to get accustomed to this new environment. The small one over there is a metronome. She doesn't like much chaotic things. Please just follow Professor Turner. He will guide you to the doors, while I still have to be ready for the case the others appear. Of course, of course. And you, Mr. Turner, look as miserable as ever. I always wonder when you will fall apart with how much you in pieces are. It is but a small inconvenience. One such as I will inevitably learn control of oneself. First, I still need to drive the car away. Oh, we can do that for you. You must be tired after your trip here. If that's all it took to kill him, they hardly would be fit. But let him do that, Sebastian. We have more important problems to solve. So, to beings that are pure Olokon, does Professor Turner look like in shambles? Or was that just meant metaphorically? The one who was the driver of the car was right in the middle of height of them, and also just a normal human height. A long blue coat and solid boots. His hands looked as human as his face did, and it also had human color. If there was a difference to human, it would come down to the only part that humans shouldn't look inside, like some already had to realize. The next in line was the other man, who was taller than the driver, but in the end still could not compare to the colossal Mr. Müller, who I now presume to be the director from his interacting with Miss Maxwell. The second candidate of the Johan Aopon was far more casual looking than the first, his clothes more lofty and overall less formal looking, but the most dominating feature about him was his long scarf that was hung over his neck. Also did every now and then It seemed as if that scarf was not moving how it was supposed to, as if it wasn't moved by the wind but something else instead. The last one, the only woman amongst them, was small, and especially compared to Mr. Müller. Perhaps this was an unfair comparison, but it was the one given to us. From all of them, she was the easiest to miss. She had long black hair and a simple hoodie. She wasn't loud or out there in other ways, and simply with the other three. There was, however, one aspect you could feel when she walked by us.
As the other teachers have told you, Aziz Tsukumogami, the one who is loud, is the household leader, and you can simply call him Müller. He is inhabiting an action figure, so I have never gotten a coherent explanation about his origin. He simply wants you to know that. But don't think you can simply go and ask the Tsukumogami what they are possessing. Müller is simply extremely open about that fact. Thanks to all of them being of human origin, will they easily slot into our midst. This is not an absolute truth, but Tsukumogami take on the worldview of what they inhabit, which is, in the case of things made by humans, the same you have. That is also why they all perfectly know one or more human languages. So please just refrain from looking into their eyes. So the ticking wasn't just me.
It's like something was behind me, but it wasn't me. Something bad happened. Something really bad happened.
She is so nervous. I don't understand. Why is she nervous? There's nothing here that is stressing.
Well, the director answered that already, even if he probably shouldn't have. I guess he did try to whisper, even if it could hardly be called whispering. A metronome is a ticking feeling, and you can assume that around strangers like this, can that also be problematic for her.
Like that the metronome gets out of beat if there's too much noise? But I thought they're super strong. Isn't that weak when she gets nervous around people? Fighting capabilities are not related to how someone does with strangers. In combat, people go into completely different mode that can be in stark contrast to how that person is normally. We should never make light of the effort they put in to get to where they are right now.
After this, did it take until it started to get dark for the second to last group to arrive. Naturally, were we still stuck here for now, as the only other option we had was to be imprisoned in our dorm, not being allowed to on our own to leave without supervision of Professor Trönov, a rule that he for certain would be upholding during the week, but for now would really be stuck there, so no one decided they needed a roof over them. The new life brought to this now desolate area was in form of another car, but one more similar to a limousine than the normal car that Tsukumogami used. It also had tinted glasses from the back, where you could easily see the driver's seat. It was not as if looks alone would be able to instantly show who would be next, due to the Yeti and Werwolf being the only of the five that have unmistakably hinged on the race. When the limousine stopped, did it take a bit before anything happened. Even after the director arrived, was there still a short amount of nothing before Schrödinger's box opened to show what was inside. The first being a woman with dark brown boned together long hair, the top being a green leather 3/4 of her upper body long piece, with white sleeves revealing underneath brown leather gloves, a belt around her waist to keep the shirt she had underneath her leather top not hanging out or wrinkled, then another to have her rock-like legwear not slip down, with it being completely open on one side. Her eyes a deep purple, it stared right into your soul. After her was a man looking impressively feeble compared to all the contestants that came before. He had a pure white fedora that covered almost all of his red-black hair, with the white rolled-up shirt he wore not doing him favors in looking strong. Unlike the first, could you see his arms and leg fully. It was not as if he was looking skinny, but for certain was he not looking like a strong warrior. Then was the last part of him that was sticking out more than anything else, were the blood-red eyes shining brightly like cat eyes do, something that was only visible thanks to it already having started to become dark. Finally did he have golden chains on his trousers and a big golden emblem on his chest. The following one was looking different, but not in a physical way. He too had red eyes, just like the one before him. He was wearing a blue toga-like clothing with a red scarf tying it together at his waist, but what made him stand out was the way he looked and moved. All of them felt distant. They clearly were not open to people. As we were almost the only other people here outside of the director, was it not as easily visible, but you could see how they avoided especially looking at us. The second they realized we were there, did they turn away from us while greeting the director, but the third one to exit was completely avoiding all contact, including the director. Finally, the last one, the tallest and oldest, was the last to exit. Long black hair, brown mantle, and thick gloves. His eyes a deep piercing yellow. Compared to the other three, did he give a far more graceful aura of, and seemed more elegant and less awkward to be here. With the exception of the third, with the other at least trying to be friendly, but he was the one that acted normal to our standards. Look at those fancy schmancy over there. Who else but vampires could be so removed from reality, thinking that that's proper attire in this day and age? Everyone has their own way of living. We shouldn't judge someone by their clothes. Listen up here, Mr. Director's child. It pisses me really off how you always butt in with your half-ass opinion. If you have something to say, say it so that people can believe you. Even the Lena is more convincing than you, and she barely even gets her mouth open. Hey, that is even enough out of my eyes. There are limits, even for what you can say. Then let the girl say it herself that it was too much. No, it is okay. No, he isn't. Hey, where are you going? But he doesn't mean any harm. Why are you angry? All he wants is to help her out. He is thinking that this is the best way of doing this. Oh, you are giving him far too much credit. He is just an asshole. This was the first time Han Peng went after someone else than Lon Fei, and it was clear why everyone would think that he is just rude. The thing is that all people are more complex than just one character trait, even when one trait will always be the most dominating most of the time. It is hard to think of someone sounding aggressive as someone that wants to help, but what Senori said was fitting into my perception of him. While his choice of words may be rude, was he at no point getting loud. With our discussion, did we also miss the vampires leaving? They finished their greeting with the director, and then quickly went over to the house at the forest. It all went surprisingly quick. First introductions, and then immediately go over to going to the rooms. When they did pass us, did only the presumably director look towards us, but said nothing, most likely because we had our own discussion going on, so he didn't want to interrupt us, or perhaps it was just because it didn't seem as if we were there for the visitors. All that was missing now was the last expected group. We weren't told more would come, however was it also not impossible, even if improbable, when we hadn't learned anything towards the customs of other magic societies. So the waiting commanded once more, and for so much more longer that we were indeed the only ones left. Even the sparse ones from when the vampires arrived did leave. You could see that some still watched through the windows of the main building nearby, but that was all. As well did Han Peng not come back. With how the teachers also had better to do than endlessly guarding a path to the forest, did he probably go back to our dorm alone, even if we were supposed to wait with Professor Turner for that.
I see something coming.
Oh yes, there is a car driving in, so we finally have the last ones arrive. We can finally go home! I no longer want to wait! You could have done that long ago. But then we can't see them all! Hold up, of all of us here, do you two seem like the ones who had it the easiest waiting? All you need was a thought of there being other races. The car in question was a rather small one looking like a rent car. Once it stopped, did the door open immediately, and out came 4 human-like people, with the first to exit hastily and tired, saying something. Quite, daja dua shishe. You could easily think that they are humans, if only looking at the other 3. However, this was not true for the first to exit.
A woman with long blonde hair, jade green eyes, wearing a green dress that had pure white lotuses stitched onto it, having green fingernails and overall simply being describable as green. What made her stand out that was immediately visible, but you may not realize what you just saw when you saw her head bob slightly up and down when she exited. In fact, was her head not connected to her body at all. You may just give it up to a hair covering her neck, but you see if you really paid attention that the hair that was covering her neck was indeed the hair that was where should be behind the neck, if such a body part would be part of her. The one following her had black twin tails and a red head, and a scarf hiding anything behind her shoulders up to her chin. Her eyes blue-grey, and just like all of them a completely normal face. The only thing standing out behind her size, or more the overall size of all of them. Even without reference could you tell that they are smaller. They were on the same level as Tam and Tom in terms of height, just that those two still had time to grow, something that probably wasn't true for them. Further did the girl have a jacket and normal jeans. After her, a man with a mantle more fit for colder climates than what we have here, even up here in the mountains. In addition did he wear a fluffy fur scarf, hiding his neck, and with it the only part that wouldn't be like a human. Otherwise did he have short brown hair and dark green eyes, gloves covering his hands, but just a normal person on the outside. The last one then being another man, with a more military looking coat that had handily been buttoned up and the collar standing up to cover his neck region. He as well had green eyes and color right in between the one before him and the first, having short black hair and also wearing more formal looking trousers. With him now all being here, but the director still not inside, and in general no one inside but us, did the woman without neck cover come directly towards us, the others begrudgingly following her. You could see the difference in attitude between them at the first glance. Those other three clearly knew what would come, and clearly did not seem interested in it. A night and day contrast that was perfectly shown in how she was openly showing her floating head compared to the others.
Is she laughing at us? What should we do? What should we do? We are not supposed to interact with them.
There's nothing to worry about, Selene. All we need to do is be friendly, and then they have no right to be angry. But you do know how to speak to them. That back then clearly wasn't any language I speak, and you also don't know magical script. The speaking would be a hands-on experience. Everyone just needs to be calm and try not to do more than they need to do. I'm sure we can wait it out. Why wait when you can act now? Someone just gonna get the teacher and that will speed up things significantly. But who should do that? Dory, you do know what your family name is, do you? Oh yes, of course, I'm right back. But don't do anything bad, don't cause any problems. Come on, we can handle it, just go already. So who is it going to? But I think we already know. It's not going to be the two children, their brother that would talk casually to the king emperor of the world. I for certain am not fit, the two silent girls ain't fit, and Zonfei for certain isn't it. What do you mean with that? I'm greeting you, but it does not seem that Miss Maxwell is here. This is an unfortunate thing indeed. Holding back Zonfei and tandem both Lapis and Tim, was it up to me? You could also see from the three behind her that this fortunate event was something she clearly had hoped for. She did also with in no way seem as if she was troubled with having to wait out time until the director arrives. Would it not be unfortunate? We are still in the first year and do not know of anything. We do not possess the ability to help you in any form. But is that not exactly what this event is for? Building an understanding of the other side. You can never learn of those that do not intend to teach you. Miss Maxwell seems to have forgotten this fundamental rule in her many attempts of seeking out peaceful gettings together. It is for us to show respect to those attempting to progress, even if failure occurs, becoming with the knowledge of this being the case. But in seeing such failure we will also see our differences.
differences that would not come to surface as both sides are trained to act according to the other side's beliefs. However, in differences lie conflict. Conflict is the path all differences will lead to, and conflict itself will lead to hatred, the path that we do not wish to tread. So may it be true, but is it not the very same difference that is needed for innovation? Innovation cannot be done just by a single person, and by overcoming difference between others will one be able to extend the world to far greater reaches. But the world does not favor this outcome, and such has been proven by time. The best path towards peace will always be to not intend to intervene in others' matters, and once done, will one realize that the world indeed is large enough for both believers to coexist. Coexist in isolation, but nothing more, stagnant and unchanging. Out of every loss will come a gain. These may not be for the here and now, not for those who have lost, but if there is just one rule that would define the entire universe, that is the rule that nothing can be lost for good, and nothing can be gained out of nihility. At this point, the Dorothea returned with the director, who saw me talking to the one, and I had to presume by now to be the director of the Fate Doma. This to her was now a reason to run towards her, preventing something that would never come to happen, that I now had learned. The world of magic is scary, but not out of being something to be afraid from, but solely from the lack of understanding. You fear what you do not know, as you cannot know what it can do. I'm so sorry for having you to wait this much. I hope the student didn't do anything to offend you. I'm for certain that they didn't intend to do so. Did the teachers not tell you to keep interaction at the minimum? With the little knowledge you have, could you easily get into problems this unknowingly? It was I who approached them. Do not punish them for that. Now that delay, on the other hand, is something to talk about. I have to apologize to come this late, as the jet lag had made me somewhat forgetful, but it was known when we would come. Yet it seems that there was a need for the students to act in your stead. I have no excuse for that. I simply neglected to look at the time, while having to handle the issues that come up with the others. Well, it is unavoidable that problems would arise from such an event, so I hold no grudge, and I have to say that the students are quite a light for sure. They are not like the others. They do not fear the dark. You should strive to get more students like them, as they will be the ones who are capable of deciding the future of this world. Those who fear are not fit to decide what action should be taken. To this did the director have nothing to say, and how could she? It was clear that the worldview of these two people was the perfect opposite. Now, as it was late, and this was the last group, with us all needing to go to the same direction, did Professor Turner come once more to bring us all towards the forest. The director went with us for parts of, but was eventually forced to go back to her work when the house at the forest edge came into view. This meant that she never actually saw them entering the building, and simply assumed that they would once they got there. But Professor Turner and she had other plans in mind once the director left, and this plan was probably for the best, as even with them looking tired, or perhaps especially because they were, could the Fate Doma not look forward to some rest inside the house that had now housed 4 different races who are at obvious cultural odds with another. I think times like these are perfect to get to know another. Yes, we need to, and being tired is not an excuse. You know exactly how much chaos will be inside this building, and do I need to repeat myself? Speak the language of here. You all know it, and do not want to see you speaking behind the back because you speak a language they don't. I know that not all of the Shangxi show will follow this, even if they could, but that does not mean you can take them as an example. As this discussion was happening on our way to the dorm, did this discussion not go unnoticed by Han Peng, who had prematurely left. He could naturally not just ignore us being here, so he left the dorm, and as if it was natural to do, went towards the commotion. One young man, I assume you are part of this lovely class? So I can assume that these are the Fate Doma, but what are they doing here? We have simply come to give a short introduction. I am Xu Xiangyang, but you can simply call me Xu Liu. I am the director of the Mofa Dakture.
here to hope we can get a bit more open between the races. It is a shame how much we feet Doman have regressed, now that we can no longer be the monsters we once were. We have evolved past that, but not in a better direction. Now we have simply become a shadow of what we once were. Instead of trying to live as the beings we are we trying to become human? But now that is enough about me. What about you? Could I ask for your name as well? Han Peng. And that was all he said before turning around and going back into the dorm, clearly being pushed away by the talkative Miss Shulu, not wanting to deal with the scenario at this hour of the day. This did not discourage Miss Shulu, and she simply turned around to me. There comes to mind we never introduced ourselves despite having such a lovely talk. It was something I seem to have forgotten and starting the conversation right away. My name is Aspan. What a pleasure to meet you once more, Mr. Aspan. Now, who else might be here? You child seem to be more fearful than the others, but it doesn't feel like you fear us. But what could happen? You have to start somewhere, decided outside of your control by your birth. The fact that you stand here means that you seek to improve where you lack, and for that very new experiences, from which you can learn. It is better to make mistakes where everyone is understanding of your situation. It might happen that you cross a line you shouldn't, but in the end, will that just leave a bad taste in the air, instead of creating a fatal moment? So tell me, girl, what is your name? Me? I am Dorothea Maxwell. You could see how much Dorothea tried to walk along a path that could not offend anyone, even if they tried, bowing deeply down and speaking loud and clearly her name, in a formal way. This did get some reaction from the three in the back, however did this not seem to be on the more positive side of the scale. This did not go unnoticed by Miss Shirley, but she simply held up her hands back, pointing at them angrily, wiggling with her finger. Maxwell, so you are Miss Maxwell's daughter. She did not seem to be all that motherly back then. It is still good to see that you have grown up well. It would be some time for the rest of you to all give an introduction. I am Tim Tamson. I am Tom Tamson. And I am their brother, but I am Tam Forrest. My name is Son Fei, daughter of Son Heruknecht. I would then be Lapis Maxwell, so I am just Dorothea's cousin. And you're next, I know you can do it. I am the Lady of Rising. I hope we can get along well. I am Senri, and I want for us to be friends. After a bit of silence did Miss Changyang look angrily at the three students behind her, to tell them to also say their names. When she said the rest of you, she apparently meant not only us. By washing her, but I am not really out to make new friends. I am Gang Xing, but while I have nothing against getting to know new people, I doubt we will do much within a week. I joined Damu. Don't the teachers forbid you to meet us anyways? On top, live you so far away that this doesn't matter ultimately. And I guess I'm Yanlai. Oh, your names sound quite human, huh? It was just a guess, but spot on by Tim. It was natural to assume that these magical creatures would have strange and unusual names. But in the end, would you even notice if they did? There are only limited amounts of sounds that can be made, and even just in close proximity to the school, could you come across widely different sounding names that are all normal. You have a problem with that? What should our names be in your opinion? Small idiot! Tom! I'm sorry. Huishi, I think you know that you are here the one who is in the wrong. This question of Mr. Thompson was justified. There are many Shenkisho who do not use human names, so the confusion is justified. We Fetoman take on human names and try our best to live amongst the humans a normal life. There are those who oppose this idea, but we do not think this is a worthwhile endeavor to simply deny reality. So we've taken on names of the country you live in. I think the same is true for the Poltergeister, but they are just another exception. You should know that all of us Shenkisho who choose to take a part in the Johan Aopon share the desire to live with you humans. So you will only see those who are well behaved. But once you leave the school, will you meet far more of those who do not like humans. Therefore is it important for you to get along with those who want to as good as you can, while you are still in the safety of school. After this did Miss Changyang turn around towards the students with a rather unpleasant look on her face and shifted in tone. Now about you three.
You are not here to prove your worth in the upcoming fights, but in everything you do outside of them. You will not simply shut yourself in and ignore this opportunity to grow your horizon, but stay within the borders set by the teachers of the school. While I would like for us to freely interact, can we not simply trample on their custom? And I do not want to see you speaking like that. While we are here, speaks their language. Have you understood that?
How?
Now, it is already late, so let's part ways for now. We still have a full week left. Sajan. Well, ye should use such occasion to the fullest, will myself have to bid ye to not do such outside of the confines of this place. It is not looked upon fondly for those that lack an experience to do, however are the words that have been said by Monsieur Leu in accordance with my own beliefs. If a happenstance were to come where there is a need for help, will be done so by myself in a hurry. It cannot be he who is at fault in seeking out more experience, but of the teachers that cannot stop you walking a wrong path. It was not as if these words were needed by Professor Turniff, as we all would do so regardless. However, did it give Dorothea a horrible look on her face. She knew the instant that Professor Turniff allowed this, did the gears start turning on those here, and what they should do. This means that the week of the Johan Aopon is now before us, and it would surely be a more busy week than any other. But we all would look forward to what it had to offer.